She was accused of witchcraft until the giant mountain man swore to protect her. Before we begin, calm your country so I know where the story is reaching. They whispered that Evelyn Hart spoke to shadows, that crops died when she walked past a field, that a child's fever had risen simply because she prayed beside the window. Every rumor made her smaller, quieter, easier to blame. Briar Hollow had never needed proof. It only needed someone who wouldn't fight back. By the time the sheriff dragged her into the center town, the crowd had already decided her fate. Torches swayed. Dust shifted under dozens of boots. Evelyn stood in the middle, wrists tied, head bowed. She wasn't trembling from guilt. She was trembling from the weight of being mislabeled by people who never cared to know her. The sheriff called her dangerous. The preacher said her silence was a doorway for darkness. A few townsfolk refused to look her in the eye, ashamed yet too afraid to speak up. Evelyn swallowed hard and tried to keep her voice steady, but the words died before they reached her lips. She had learned long ago that speaking often made things worse. So she stood there, small and alone, waiting for whatever came next. And then the ground seemed to shift, not from thunder, from a man. Jonas Creed walked into the square without hurry, without noise, without a single sign. He cared what anyone thought. He was known for cutting timber alone in the mountains, for living far from town, for keeping his thoughts locked behind a stern, unreadable face. People said he preferred trees to humans. People said he carried grief the way other men carried tools. But nobody expected him to stop here. Nobody expected him to come for her. He stepped through the circle until he stood between Evelyn and the sheriff. The crowd pulled back as if a cold wind had blown through. Jonas didn't glare. He didn't curse. He simply existed with a weight that made excuses fall silent. He placed a steady hand on Evelyn's shoulder, offering protection without asking permission. She looked up in shock, unsure why a stranger would stand beside her when those she had known for years had abandoned her. The sheriff demanded an explanation, but Jonas didn't give him one. He cut the rope around Evelyn's wrists with a simple tug. Then he draped his coat around her shoulders, covering her bruised skin with something warm, something safe. His voice, when it finally came, was low and calm. "I don't need to know her," he said. "I only need to know a lie." No one dared step forward after that. Blame loses its strength when met with someone who refuses to believe it. Jonas guided Evelyn away from the crowd. No struggle followed. No one reached for her. The mob broke apart as easily as sand. She walked beside him, half protected, half carried by the certainty in his presence. For the first time in hours, she breathed freely. When they reached the edge of town, she whispered a shaky thank you. Jonas shook his head gently. "Save your voice," he murmured. "There's time for it later." The mountains rose ahead of them, quiet and open. She didn't know where he was taking her. He didn't offer details. But she sensed something she had forgotten how to feel, safety, and beside her walked a man who had no reason to save her, yet chose to anyway. Some rescues begin with shouting. This one began with silence, and a single moment of unexpected mercy. Jonas Creed's cabin stood deep in the mountains, tucked between tall pines that moved like slow breath in the morning air. The place felt untouched by gossip or judgment. Evelyn hadn't stepped inside a home without fear in years, and now the wooden door closed behind her with a quiet thud that felt strangely final, as if the world she had known could no longer follow her up this far. Jonas didn't speak much. He set a pot of warm water on the table, placed a blanket around her shoulders, then stepped back as if afraid his presence might overwhelm her. Evelyn watched him with cautious gratitude. She wasn't used to a man who moved gently while looking carved from stone. He tended to her bruised wrists with a care that made her throat tighten. No questions, no assumptions, just steady hands and the kind of patience that felt like a rare language. When she tried to apologize for being trouble, he shook his head once. "You're not trouble," he said. "You're tired." It was the first time anyone had understood the difference. The hours passed quietly. She explored the small cabin from her chair, noticing details that revealed pieces of his life. tools arranged neatly, carvings half-finished, a well-worn Bible missing its cover, a single quilt folded with more precision than she expected from a man his size. She wondered who taught him to keep things so carefully. She wondered what loss made him prefer these mountains to people. By sundown, she had gathered enough courage to speak. "Why did you help me?" she asked softly. "You don't even know me." Jonas leaned on the counter, arms crossed. "You were alone," he said. "I know what that feels like." His voice held a weight she didn't push against. Some stories didn't need explanation. Some wounds announced themselves even in silence. Evelyn looked toward the window, where the sky had turned lavender. "People don't like what they don't understand," she whispered. Jonas studied her for a moment. "Then they should learn," he replied. It was simple, almost stubborn, yet it carried more hope than anything she had heard in years. She felt something loosen in her chest. The quiet between them was intense. It was steady, almost companion-like, a kind of quiet that let thoughts settle instead of stirring panic. She found herself breathing deeper, grounding herself in a space that offered no demands. Later, Jonas set a bowl of stew in front of her. She tried to eat slowly, but hunger made her tearful. He noticed without comment. When she apologized for that, too, he replied, "You don't owe me pretty behavior." No softness in his tone, just truth. A truth that steadied her more than comfort ever could. Night wrapped around the cabin, cool and calm. Jonas added wood to the fire, then stepped outside for a moment. Evelyn followed him to the doorway, watching him stand on the porch, shoulders lifted slightly as if bracing against memories only he could see. "Will the town come looking for me?" she asked, her voice small but steady. He didn't turn. "They won't climb this mountain at night," he said. "Fear makes men loud, not brave." She felt a shiver of relief. When he finally faced her, his expression softened just enough to show he cared. "Rest," he said. "You're safe here tonight." For the first time in years, she believed someone who said those words. As she lay under the quilt, listening to the distant wind moving through pine branches, she realized something unexpected. She wasn't healed. Not yet, but she was no longer sinking. Jonas hadn't given her answers. He had given her a place where her breath didn't tremble. And sometimes healing begins there. Morning arrived slowly, creeping through the cabin like a hesitant guest. Evelyn woke to the soft crackle of embers and the faint scent of pine. Jonas was already outside, splitting small pieces of wood with the same quiet focus he had shown the night before. She watched him through the open door, the early light resting on his shoulders, and wondered how a man who kept to himself could carry so much steadiness. She stepped onto the porch, blanket still wrapped around her, unsure if she should interrupt him. Jonas glanced up, nodded once, then returned his work. It wasn't dismissal. It was acknowledgement, an invitation to stay without needing permission. She sat on the step. "You didn't sleep much," she murmured. He answered plainly. "Didn't need to. Wanted to make sure the night didn't trouble you." That simple sentence reached deeper than she expected. People had watched her before, but never protect her, only to judge. Jonas's watchfulness felt different, solid, unclaimed by suspicion. As the sun rose, Evelyn felt an unfamiliar weight settle in her chest. Not fear, something quieter, warmer. She wasn't sure she had a name for it. By midday, she gathered courage to speak a truth she had avoided for years. "Jonas," she said, "the things they accuse me of, I never asked for those rumors. I never meant to live so far from everyone. But every time I tried to help, it made people hate me more." He set down the wood, wiped his hands on his trousers, and faced her fully. "You don't owe them a life lived in the dark," he said. "You don't owe them silence either." His words didn't carry heat. They carried weight, the kind that steadies a person who is always bracing for impact. Evelyn looked toward the valley below. "I don't know if I can go back." "You don't have to," he replied. "Not today. Not tomorrow. Not alone." He paused a moment, as though choosing to rest carefully. You're welcome to stay here until you feel steady on your feet again. The offer felt like a hand to hold. She didn't take out a fear of being a burden. She took it because she finally believed she could stand beside someone without shrinking. Days passed gently. She helped with small chores, found comfort in the rhythm of sweeping floors, chopping herbs, airing quilts in the sun. Jonas never hovered, never questioned, but he noticed everything. When she flinched at sudden noises, when her hand shook while pouring tea, when the memories of Briar Hollow crept into her silence. And slowly, she noticed things about him, too. The way he paused before speaking, as if weighing the honesty of his own words. The way he stood between her and the edge of the porch on windy nights. The way he seemed surprised whenever she smiled. One evening, she stepped outside as the last light faded, thinking of the town far below. "They'll forget me eventually," she said quietly. Jonas shook his head. "People forget lies," he said, "but truth stays standing." He glanced at her then, eyes steady. "You're stronger than the story they tried to give you." That sentence settled into her spirit with the gentle finality of a door closing on an old chapter. A week later, Evelyn made her decision. She stood beside Jonas at the porch rail, hands clasped. "I'm not ready to face them," she said, "but I'm ready to face myself. And if you don't mind, I'd like to stay. Not because I'm hiding, because I choose to." Jonas didn't shift or smile or change expression much at all, but something in the set of his shoulders eased. "Then stay," he said. "This house could use another heartbeat." The mountains held the moment quietly, as if giving them room to begin again. Evelyn breathed in the clean, pine-scented air and felt something she had forgotten she could feel. Dignity. Not because she was defended by a strong man, but because someone finally saw her without twisting the truth. And Jonas, silent, steady, unassuming, had found something too. A voice he didn't know he still possessed. A reason to open his door. A companion who understood, quiet the way he did. Their story didn't end with a declaration. It ended with something stronger, the shared understanding that healing wasn't loud. It was steady, slow, and earned. A wounded innocent found shelter. A silent protector found purpose. And together, they built a place where lies could not survive, but truth could breathe. If you want more stories like this, make sure to like, subscribe, and comment.